kind of seems like a big deal, right? I know we have all these other things going on, but that seems like a really big deal. Joining me now, Lisa Daftari, editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk. Okay, Lisa, well, our two biggest enemies on the world stage got together and had a little powwow today. Why?
Because they can. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't invite Iran's regime to the mix, but they'll probably invite him at the next gathering. Because they can. That's the short of it, and that's the most important takeaway here, is that weak foreign policy has consequences. This is the image of the consequence of weak foreign policy. What China and Russia, and of course I will add Iran's regime, and you can add North Korea to the list as well, have decided is that they don't need the United States, that they will work around the sanctions, that they will work around the isolation, and they have each other. So we have effectively pushed them into each other's laps. They're working well together, and their most important, I would say, their priority is to really stick it to the Biden administration to let them know. So these optics are not accidental. They're getting together both militarily, they're working together economically, they are selling weapons to each other, and no accidents.
Lisa, I guess, how strong are they together? I know that's kind of a lame, open-ended question, but I want to know, if I'm looking at an Iran, Russia, China, North Korea alliance, I know North Korea is a bit of a turd, but do they together have enough to do some serious things? That sounds pretty formidable to me, but I don't.
You know what? If you look at the very least, right, the minimum here is that they help each other get off the hook. So when we try to, for example, isolate Russia and try to punish them with economic sanctions because of what they're doing in Ukraine, while we give billions and billions of dollars and military equipment to the Ukrainians, what China does is let the Russians off the hook for that. What the Iran regime is doing is selling weapons to Russia then. So what they're basically doing is canceling out what the United States is hoping to do. So what ends up happening here is that we will not see the results we want to see in the Ukraine war. So at the very, very least, we've wasted all this money by putting it into Ukraine and providing them with aid, while Russia is not getting the message. Look, sanctions always come with some sort of behavioral change that we can expect from the other party, right? So when we put the sanctions on Russia or on China or on Iran's regime or Venezuela or North Korea, it comes with that, we need you to do this, and then we will remove the sanctions, because it's some sort of change that we expect and need in terms of national security and global security, et cetera. In the case of Russia, what we've done is put these sanctions on them, but they are either not well enforced or now being undone by the Chinese and Iran's regime, who are then stepping in to fill that void. What we could effectively have done is to put sanctions on our enemies and then enforce them properly so that they are not able to move around them and evade them the way that our enemies have been able to do.
We are not involved in this, won't be involved in this. I have no interest in getting involved in some type of manufactured circus by some Soros DA, okay? He's trying to do a political spectacle. He's trying to virtue signal for his base. I've got real issues I got to deal with here in the state of Florida. We're obviously shutting down CBDC, which is important. We've got so many things pending in front of the legislature. I've got to spend my time on issues that actually matter to people. I can't spend my time worrying about things of that nature. So we're not going to be involved in it in any way. I'm fighting for Floridians, and I'm fighting back against Biden. That's what I do every single day.
Okay. We actually haven't talked about Ron DeSantis and his response today. Mike Cernovich, creator of Hoaxed, and also he has a Substack, which you should go check out. He and I actually see this differently. Mike, I personally think Team DeSantis made a huge mistake by making a statement at all. I think the whole Team Trump make a statement. Where's Ron's statement? Was obviously just them goading him into making a statement so they could mock him for the statement and make it about DeSantis. You think his statement sucked, though. The floor is yours.
That last paragraph is what did him in. Everything else before that was great, but you have to know, as you know and I know, every time you talk, how are they going to clip this? And that last paragraph makes him look like he's capitulating. So the reason we disagree is actually interesting, because maybe I'm more of a cynic than you, which I did not think was possible. So hear me out. When is Ron DeSantis ever going to have an opportunity to say, oh, poor little Trump, he's being prosecuted. Let me, someone who won re-election in a record landslide, let me make sure that Trump's due process rights are protected. Let me make sure that everything is on the up and up and everything is clear. That would have enraged Trump. That would have been what people of our age and generation would call big timing, right? We all know that guy where you say, oh, I remember I went on a vacation one time to Paris, and they'll go, oh yeah, but I stayed at a better hotel, and have you ever had this or have you ever had that? So this was DeSantis' opportunity to say, look, Donald Trump is a Floridian. I am the governor. I will ensure that his due process rights are protected. And what's Trump going to do? He would be furious. Now, here's what you got to understand. The MAGA influencers are getting under the skin of DeSantis and his little online army. And I'm, of course, in the middle, right? Because I'm friends with people on both sides, and they're snipping at each other. And it's gotten pretty dirty. So, for example, DeSantis was not allowed as a college-aged man to go to the party of college freshman-aged women because now we're the left. And if you're doing that, of course, you can't do that anymore, which is bizarre considering Trump's was in a Playboy video with people of similar age. But so that whole thing is stupid. The DeSantis people have therefore lost the plot, which is you don't issue a statement to pander or placate the bad faith attacks by the MAGA influencers. You issue a statement to show that I'm the governor, actually. Let me remind you that I have the power here, and I'm the governor, and I'll make sure that I protect poor, helpless Donald Trump. So that's why I'm more cynical than you.
No, I don't think so. And I don't disagree with that at all. I guess my thinking on it was this. I have watched, and I know you've watched this, you talk about this all the time. I've watched Republican after Republican. It's virtually all of them, from Trump on down. They'll dance when the media says dance, and meaning, hey, denounce this. Do you denounce white supremacy? Why haven't you denounced this? Do you denounce this? And Republicans will do this all day long. And even when they get annoyed, they'll frustratedly say, yes, I denounce it. Can we just change the subject like some hissy fit little teenage girl? He should have known, Team DeSantis should have known that the Team Trump people were obviously going to use whatever he said to make this story about DeSantis and somehow glob some of this stain onto him. I don't disagree actually with what you just said about what DeSantis should have said. I just argue the only way to win that game is not to play.
Oh no, the way you win that game is you position yourself as the national leader taking on the Soros DAs, which is what he did. The whole first part of the statement, amazing. He leaves that first part of the statement, which is, hey, let's talk about these selective prosecutions. Let's talk about the Bolshevik tactics. Let's talk about the Stalin show trials. Leave that last part open, because then what the media would say is, oh, so Governor DeSantis, are you saying that you will not allow Trump to be handed over? Let them start that fight. And now you're at the center of it, and you're not arguing about Trump. You're arguing against the Soros DAs. And you're saying, why is it that anti-Semitic criminals are allowed to run wild in New York? Why is it that the left claims that they support bail reform and defunding the police, but now all of a sudden they don't? They want violent criminals to attack you. So Trump is a pawn in your game if you're Ron DeSantis. If you're a king, right? If you're a king, and that's how you have to think if you want to win. If you're Ron DeSantis, you want to be the king. So then you have to make Trump your pawn. How do you do that? Well, now it's you versus these Soros lunatics in New York. And then when they go, DeSantis, so you're saying then that you will not turn him over. Let the media play into that. And then you go, hey, why don't you interview Alan Bragg and ask him why all these anti-Semitic lunatics are putting people on stretchers and paralyzing people, and you don't even care. And then now you've won the positioning. And then the Trump people are going to snip at you or whatever. But you're talking about a different conversation. So everything in life, from mindset in your own life, to narrative driving, to positioning, is how is it that I get my message out, and how is it that I pick fights that I can win? This is a fight that DeSantis can win. So he's not picking a fight for Trump. He's keeping Trump out of it. So when they keep badgering him about, well, you're claiming then that you're not going to hand over Trump, you say, look, we're talking about Soros DAs here. Show me your coverage of the Soros DAs. And then you've elevated that conversation, and you've made that the discussion. That's the positioning that you want to take.
Poem one today says, and always one moon like a silent drum tapping at every rooftop and every window on of every country. Let me start this over again. I'm getting so intimidated by being here. And always one moon like a silent drum tapping on every rooftop and every window of one county.
Joining me now, Brigadier General Anthony J. Tata, author of the book Total Empire. General, honestly, we play these clips a lot, and everyone gets a good laugh out of them. We do too. But the truth is, these things matter because Xi Jinping watches when the president speaks, and Vladimir Putin watches, and the Ayatollah watches. And now we have these countries coming together, and we just look weak and inept and dumb, and it does matter.
Yeah, it absolutely matters, Jesse. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on. The Kim Jong-un watches too, and what you've got is Russia, China, Iran, North Korea all coalescing together, and which I reference actually in Total Empire. It's all about China's drive to hegemony, and when you think about what Xi is doing here, talking to Russia, he's 100% messaging that he's the 800-pound gorilla in the world now, not the United States. He's got the fastest growing economy in the world now, not the United States. He's the one who is building an alliance that is a formidable alliance that will, whose intent is to counter U.S. presence and operations around the world and to begin to shape economic outcomes in China's favor, not in the United States' favor. And so weak economy under this administration, weakening military, we can't even meet our recruitment goals. And now what we see is a coalition forming that is sole purpose is to counter U.S. interests around the globe.
Yeah, to say nothing of the fact the U.S. Navy's rusting out from underneath us. General, can you help us understand, because we don't know what you know, help us understand how formidable that alliance is. We don't understand the military capabilities of China or China and Russia or China and Russia and Iran. Half the people in this country think Iran's still living in mud huts. Like, we don't understand what this alliance means. Can they challenge us? What does it mean? What are they?
They absolutely can challenge us. And so just think of it in terms of, I think most of us remember the Reagan years, the Soviet Union, and the Reagan strategy to defeat communism, which was important for our vital interests around the world, was to use the bank, the good economy that he developed, to create a 500-ship Navy, to create a 500,000 person army, increase the size of the Marine Corps. I know what you served in, and the Air Force. And so we bankrupted the Soviet Union to the point that they broke, and the Iron Wall came down, the Iron Curtain came down, and those countries went ahead and seceded essentially from the Soviet Union, and freedom broke out everywhere. Now you think about our economy stumbling a little bit, and Russia bogged down in Ukraine, running out of people, running out of equipment, and then China with their rapidly growing economy coming in to backstop them. That's a never-ending flow of money and arms and supplies, and it's almost like a reverse Cold War strategy where China and Russia are going to try to do to us what we did to the Soviet Union. That's how scary this is, quite frankly.
Can you help me understand, what does China gain? I understand what Russia gains, but as you mentioned, man, they're taking it on the chin right now. Even if they're winning, they're losing a lot of men, a lot of manpower. This has got to be costing them a fortune. What I don't quite see is, what does China gain from saddling up with Russia right now?
Yeah, so we list China as the number one adversary in our national defense strategy, which I managed when I was performing the duties of the Undersecretary of Defense. And so China, and it could, Jesse, just be all a information campaign, right? You know, that conversation that Putin and Xi had on the way out, You're my best friend. We're doing something that's never been done before in the last 100 years. All of that, they knew the cameras were there, the microphones were there. It could just be messaging, and information warfare is a part of warfare. But let's assume, and you always have to worst case your enemy. Let's just assume that it's real. They're going to provide economic support. They're going to provide arms and ammunition. They get to begin to deplete us in this reverse Cold War strategy where we pour more arms, more ammunition, more treasure, hopefully not blood and treasure, but more of everything into Ukraine. We become myopically focused on Ukraine. Meanwhile, that's beginning this death by 1,000 cuts strategy that China supporting Russia gets us sucked into all of that. And then they walk over and they go take Taiwan in a very soft manner like they did Hong Kong. That's a very plausible strategic chess move here. And it's worth it to them to give some arms and ammunition and money to Russia to soften up our focus on Taiwan.
There is another, well, John Kirby was asked about North Korea because I want to ask you about it. Here's a little clip.
Kim Jong-un ordered to be ready for a nuclear attack at any time. Do you think North Korea's nuclear attack is imminent?
We watch it as closely as we can. There's no indications or no information at this time that would lead us to believe that some sort of actual strike by North Korea is imminent.
I'm not worried about North Korea striking us, although maybe I should be. But what I can't understand is what is this group of nations, what do they get out of North Korea? They're not powerful economically. They kind of suck economically. I have serious questions about how powerful their military is. What do they bring to the table? Are they just the junkyard dog that China enjoys having on the leash?
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I would describe it, Jesse. They're a junkyard dog. They are a stick in the eye of the United States. They have this capability to launch some missiles over Japan, grab some headlines, and so China can dial them up and say, and it's kind of like the Russia strategy, catch the attention of the United States here a little bit and dilute their focus. What China's strategy here is keep us focused on everything but them. And quite frankly, I think it's working because this religion of diving deep into Ukraine in our media and in this administration is dangerous. We have to be there in NATO. We have to support NATO. I support doing all of those things. I don't support putting boots on the ground in Ukraine. Obviously, we do an annual exercise in South Korea, and that's got North Korea spinning up, testing some missiles, putting out press releases about their 800,000 person army ready to fight the United States. So every March, we do this annual exercise in the Republic of Korea, South Korea, and I think that gets North Korea's anxiety level up, and they start putting out press releases and launching a few missiles.
Figures. The book is Total Empire. General, thank you for giving us some time.
I think it's different when you get in there and you're having, I could be wrong, but
we
I wouldn't
call that,
know, but having your fingerprint taken and your picture taken.
We call that, Mika.
What?
That's called whistling past the graveyard. He's not looking forward to any of it. He's horrified. He's just talking big. The walls are closing in, as has been said before.
Oh, gosh, more walls are closing in, crap. Joining me now, by the grace of God, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. We actually have a good one, Congressman Jim Jordan of the great state of Ohio. All right, Congressman, I don't know what I find to be more laughable. The more walls are closing in talk on what's clearly a bogus charge, or the fact that MSNBC apparently has 95 people on panels. Who could do TV like that?
Well, Yeah, and they've only been saying the, quote, walls were closing in on I don't know how many different issues. You know, first it was Russia. Then it was his phone call with Zelensky. Then it was his tax returns. Then it was his business records. Then it was his children. Then it was who knows what else. And now it's this crazy issue. So, yeah, the left has been saying this trying this and saying this for 7 years, I guess. But I think, your viewers and the American people, I think they get the facts here that, first of all, the Justice Department wouldn't bring this case. The Federal District of New York wouldn't bring this case. The previous district attorney, Mr. Vance, wouldn't bring this case. And the current district attorney wouldn't bring this case a year ago. And it wasn't until two of his folks left the DA's office, wrote a book, started getting the left all fired up, and maybe most importantly, President Trump announced he was running for president, that suddenly, oh, Shazam, I've reconsidered. I'm going to bring the case, it looks like now. So, by the way, our star witness is going to be the guy who went to prison for lying, who came in front of the House Oversight Committee 4 years ago and lied 6 times, Michael Cohen. Such a deal.
Yeah, what a great guy Michael Cohen is. Okay, so everyone knows, look, it's obvious. Everyone knows it's a political prosecution by one of these Soros-backed nutball prosecutors. Yep. The question is, Congressman, how do we stop this? Because people are mad about Alvin Bragg. I've made the point, when you look at the state of our law schools, there are tons of Alvin Braggs graduating every year now, heading into the legal profession. They don't care about the Constitution or the law or right or wrong. They're going there for a purpose, and that's to attack people like you and me.
Yep. Yeah, they're going there to attack the First Amendment, to attack their political opposition, to advance their political agenda. And the only way, in my judgment, the only way to really get at this from Congress is to stop the money flowing to these agencies that do this sort of thing. So this is what we're trying to do with a number of investigations we're involved in, is get the facts on the table, because that's always step one. What all happened? Let's get all the facts on the table. Let's propose legislation to remedy that situation. And maybe most importantly, let's not fund these agencies that are doing these harmful things, or let's limit the money that says you can't use money for X, Y, and Z. You can't use money to stop misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, all these attacks on the First Amendment. Ultimately, you have to attack via the appropriations process. You have to use the power of the purse.
The weaponization of the federal government is, look, in my mind, it's priority one. Everyone has their own priorities, but we don't have a country if this continues this way, with American citizens being attacked. The most stark example of this was Merrick Garland taking a letter from a teachers union and then sicking the FBI on parents. Judiciary just put out a little memo about the basis for that. Was that legit?
No, it was all manufactured. You got Democrat U.S. attorneys saying this looks manufactured. When I talk to local law enforcement, they're all scratching their heads like, why are you guys involved? Why is the federal government involved? If there's some kind of incident, local law enforcement can handle it. So this was a completely manufactured incident. The Democrats told us, they're not going to use counterterrorism measures. Yes, they did. They did so in Georgia. The Democrats said, there was no real coordination between the school boards groups and the Biden administration before the initial letter on September 29th, 2021. Yes, there was. And then, of course, the Democrats said, these threats are everywhere, all over the country. Well, they weren't. There were 25 parents who ultimately got investigated. Only one resulted in a full investigation, and no one has been charged under this apparatus, this protocol, this procedure that Merrick Garland set up. And again, the Biden administration was working with the school board groups prior to the initial letter. They created the predicate all for political reasons. And that's what our report shows clearly, what they were up to.
What can we do about that? What should we do about that? The AG is the top law enforcement officer in the country. That's a fairly critical position. If this is a human being who's either too weak or biased or just flat out stupid, I doubt he's a stupid person, but for whatever reason, if he's using that post to attack Republicans, how do we stop that?
You got to get a new president. I mean, look, we're gonna do what I just described. Facts on the table, pass legislation, do what we can in the appropriations process. But at some point, you have to have the power of the chief executive of the country, the presidency, who will name the new attorney general so that you can clean up this kind of thing. Because remember what we've learned now, they not only targeted parents, they targeted pro-lifers, and they targeted traditional Catholics. We have the memorandum issued from the Richmond field office where it said, if you're a traditional Catholic, we're going to treat you as a domestic extremist. I mean, this is crazy. And it goes back to this whole mantra that the left has that was, I think, actually, you saw it clearly when Joe Biden stood in front of Independence Hall and called half the country fascists and extremists. It's crazy. But the attack on people of a different political persuasion and the attack on the First Amendment is, as you said, Jesse, one of the scariest things I've ever seen.
Before I let you go, okay, Fed raised rates today a little. Congressman, it makes me nervous that it was only a little. Doesn't it have to be more? I don't want interest rates going up, obviously, but hyperinflation is the kind of thing that ends nations. Do the banks really, did they intimidate the Fed into backing off things they should be doing?
Well, it kind of appears like that's what happened. But I would even say this, the spending has got to stop. Because understand what created the inflation, which then caused the Fed to go with the interest rates hike, was the ridiculous levels of spending we've seen in the last 26 months from this administration. So that, to me, is the real problem. That's why this debt ceiling debate and the appropriations process coming up here the next few months is so darn important.
What is the administration doing specifically to counter the growing Russia and China relationship?
What we're focused on is revitalizing our alliances and partnerships around the world and advancing our foreign policy goals around the world. It's not about countering them. It's about advancing our goals.
Do you think that Putin and Xi fear President Biden?
You'd have to ask them whether they fear or they not. It is not about fear. It's about President Biden advancing our foreign policy goals around the world. It's about President Biden revitalizing these alliances and partnerships. It's about President Biden and what he's doing to preserve our national security interests around the world. That's what we're focused on.
It's not about fear. Oh, gosh, we're so screwed. Joining me now, my buddy Kurt Schlichter, columnist, author of the new book Inferno, and my other buddy Jim Hansen, president, World Strat Solutions, former Green Beret. Okay, Kurt, you know what? I introduced you first. I'll lead it off the top. It's not about fear, Kurt. It's not about fear. Do you think they fear Joe Biden, Kurt?
You know, John Kirby sounds a lot like my friend Jim Hansen, so it's disconcerting to hear such sissy garbage in such a similar voice. I mean, you know, the guy was a Navy admiral, so I'm not expecting a whole lot out of this crop. I mean, my gosh, where have you gone, Admiral Nimitz? No, they don't fear Biden. They are celebrating Biden. That this guy's in charge. They're high-fiving each other over caviar and vodka in Moscow right now. What a disgrace. What an absolute disgrace. What a strategic abomination this is. I don't even know where to begin and yet remain FCC compliant.
Jim, okay, fear is necessary, is it not? I know we're not supposed to use words like hate and fear because we're in this new namby-pamby world of ours, but actually it is important that Xi and Putin fear America, correct?
If they don't fear us, they can't respect us because they're our enemies. If our enemies don't at least have the idea that there is leadership in the United States that could cause them harm, then we have a problem, and we have a problem. I mean, we just saw the Chinese just brokered a deal between our enemy Iran and our former ally, the Saudis in Arabia, in that overthrew, the peace accords that Trump did with the Abraham Accords. So now they're in Moscow and likely to broker a deal for peace there. Where's the U.S. on the world stage? We're nowhere. Biden's in the basement licking an ice cream cone.
Oh, okay, you know what? We're going to pause on all this before we get to the Ukraine stuff because we're going to do something, just a little charity work we do often on this show. This is called a dumping on John Cornyn section. So we're going to pause all the news of the day. And Kurt, look, if there was a portrait up in D.C. of, hey, just put one picture up of defining Washington, D.C., I've argued several times that you would take a picture of John Cornyn and just slap that ball of uselessness on the wall and say that is Washington, D.C. But that's just me, Kurt. What do you think about Texas Senator John Cornyn?
Well, look, it's not enough that this guy had to go help the Democrats with their latest gun grab thing out of some bizarre, misguided notion that the Washington Post was going to like him. But just recently, they, John Cornyn went after somebody who was saying, maybe we ought to have a real strategy that promotes America's interest in Ukraine. I said, well, that sounds like you're channeling Neville Chamberlain. Okay, like I say to so many young liberals who quote Harry Potter at me, read another book. Everything's not Munich. All right? My gosh, and this kind of implies that he's Winston Churchill. Okay? He's not fit to lick Winston Churchill's cigar ashtray.
Thanks for that visual, Kurt. Jim, the John Cornyn minute is yours. Please, sir.
He is a 100% useless waste of human protoplasm and an oxygen thief. And to attack Sean Davis from the Federalist is just absurd. Sean's a patriot. Sean's smart enough to know that if America is not defending a strategic interest or advancing one, we have no business running headlong into World War III because everybody wants to hate on Putin.
Which leads me to John Kirby. I can't even believe this is a video that exists, but this is John Kirby talking about why America is against a ceasefire.
It's fine for the Chinese to go out there and say they want a ceasefire. We'd all like to see the fighting stop. Who wouldn't? But if it stops now, without any consideration of the Ukrainian side, without any discussion between the Chinese and the Ukrainians, without any accession by them to an idea of a ceasefire, it basically freezes in place what Mr. Putin has been able to achieve on the ground inside Ukraine. It's dwindling, but he still has occupied territory in Ukraine, and that's just unacceptable.
Okay, now, Kurt, for whatever people feel about this Ukraine-Russian mess, I would hope we could all agree that young Russian soldiers and young Ukrainian soldiers and Ukrainian civilians, it would be really nice if they could stop dying in droves as they currently are. But apparently that's not America's foreign policy right now.
Well, look, I'm for America's interest. Look, I like the Ukrainians. I went and trained them. They're tough dudes. They're fighting for their country in their own way. They're pursuing their country's interests. We should pursue ours. Now, let's be clear. None of the three of us are hawks. You, Jesse, you are a fighting Marine. Jim was a snake eater, and of course, I washed trucks in the desert. But the thing is, we all have a common experience, and we've been there when people have been hurt or worse. And my test is always, could I sit down with a mom of an 82nd Airborne paratrooper in Oklahoma and say, ma'am, this is why your son died, and have her not slap my face? And I don't know, I don't see that test here, because this can suck us in. We've already lost one drone. It's only a matter of time before somebody's in the wrong place at the wrong time and gets killed. And I don't understand why it's worth that. No one's articulated that to me, because they can't, because they don't understand strategy. They don't understand national interest. All they're doing is reacting, usually to hack cliches like the one John Cornyn shot out this morning.
Yeah, no doubt.